The chrome and steel of the apex citadel gleamed under the artificial daylight of Xylos Prime, but Sergeant Evan Price was focused on the reflection in the floor. He could see the holographic banners of the Interplanetary Alliance rippling overhead, displaying symbols of unity that felt thinner than the light projecting them. He watched the boots of delegates, 1,000 different species, click, slither, and hover across the polished obsidian. It was, he thought, the galaxy's most expensive and least sincere dance recital. His job was to stand still. He was very good at standing still. Evan Price was a man who craved the mundane. He worked for the Interplanetary Guard, a glorified security detail for diplomats who believed their own importance shielded them better than body armor. He was assigned to the protection detail of the Human Consortium, a small, noisy faction in the grand scheme of the Alliance. He lived in a universe drowning in power. On the transport to Xylos, his shuttle pilot had been a low-grade telekinetic, using her mind to steady her synth coffee while navigating a minor asteroid field. The man who ran the noodle shop in Evan's habitation block could guess a customer's order with 90% accuracy. A parlor trick precog. Powers were common. They were flashy. They were, in Evan's opinion, a tremendous inconvenience. Evan had a power too. He just never used it. He kept it coiled tight in his chest, a singularity of potential that he refused to acknowledge. It was a cold, quiet thing. And he had spent his entire adult life building a fortress of normalcy around it. He was Sergeant Price. He filed his reports on time. He ironed his uniform. He was aggressively, painfully normal. He was a gray rock in a river of shimmering, superpowered fish. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Today, however, the river was unusually turbulent. The summit was to welcome the Trillion Empire. They were new to the Alliance, and their arrival had sent ripples of anxiety through the established order. They were rumored to be technologically superior, culturally rigid, and biologically enigmatic. When their delegation entered the Grand Hall, a hush fell. They were tall, slender, and moved with a grace that was almost unsettling. Their skin had a faint, pearlescent luster. They were led by a severe-looking ambassador whose face seemed carved from pale marble. And trailing just behind him, looking utterly bored, was Evan's eyes, trained to spot anomalies, locked onto her. She was part of the official delegation, wearing the same severe silver and black uniform. But she wore it poorly. Her cobalt blue hair was escaping its formal twist. Her eyes, a startling shade of violet, were not scanning the political threats. They were examining the ceiling architecture, the floating service drones. And, for one brief, uncomfortable moment, she caught his gaze. He immediately looked away, returning to his professional scan of the crowd. His comms unit, nestled in his ear, remained silent. A good detail was a boring detail. He craved boring. The first few hours of the summit were exactly the kind of agonizing monotony he enjoyed. Speeches were made. Vague promises were exchanged. The Cathari, crystalline beings who communicated in resonating chords, played a song of galactic peace that sounded suspiciously like static. Evan focused on his breathing. Inhale. Exhale. Maintain the perimeter. Do not let the cold thing in his chest uncoil. The incident occurred during the first official recess. Delegates moved from the hall to the Solstice Lounge for refreshments. Evan and his squad repositioned, forming a loose, unobtrusive perimeter around the human ambassador, a man who was currently laughing too loudly at a joke told by a gaseous entity floating in a containment suit. Evan stood near an alcove serving nutrient-infused liquids. He was scanning the crowd when a clear, feminine voice spoke directly at his side. "You have not moved in 47 minutes. Are your leg hydraulics locked?" He turned his head slowly. It was her, the blue-haired Trillian. She was standing far closer than protocol allowed, peering at him with intense, scientific curiosity. She was holding a flute of something that bubbled with pale blue light. "No, ma'am," Evan said, his voice a flat monotone. "I am on duty." "Duty." "Yes. The programmed state of subservience to a greater task." She tilted her head. "We have archives of your species. You are human. Yes, I find your physiology fascinating. Your faces are very mobile, yet yours is not." Evan felt a muscle in his jaw tighten. "It is called professionalism, ma'am." "Professionalism?" She tasted the word. "An external display of internal suppression. Very inefficient. On Trill, we express our internal state directly. It avoids systemic data corruption." She pointed at the gaseous entity. "That being, for example, he is projecting false bonhomie. It is giving me a headache. You, however, you are projecting nothing. It is very restful." He was supposed to call for a liaison. He was supposed to direct her back to her delegation. But her handlers, two massive Trillians, who looked like they could bench press a shuttle, were deep in conversation across the room. "Can I assist you with something, ma'am?" Evan asked, hoping to expedite the end of this interaction. "I do not know," she said. "I am Mira. I am the third Imperial Analyst of House Kavere, and I am very bored. This summit is a redundancy of posturing. My father insists I attend to observe, but no one is saying anything of substance." Evan remained silent. It was not his place to comment on the substance of the summit. Mira sighed, a surprisingly human sound. She looked down at her bubbling drink, then back at him. "Earlier, during the procession, I dropped my data slate. You retrieved it." Evan's memory replayed the moment. She had fumbled the sleek, silver device. A nearby attendant, a human with minor telekinetic talent, had tried to catch it with his mind, only succeeding in making it wobble erratically. Evan, moving with simple, practiced speed, had plucked it from the air with his hand just inches before it hit the floor. He had handed it back to her without a word. "I was performing my duties, ma'am," Evan said. "No," Mira insisted, leaning closer. The scent of ozone and something like fresh rain wafted from her. "The other human tried. He used his power. It was clumsy. You used precision. You assessed the trajectory, calculated the velocity, and intercepted. No wasted energy. No display. Just pure, clean execution. It was beautiful." Evan felt a prickle of alarm. Beautiful. This was getting strange. "It was basic physics, ma'am?" "Exactly." Her violet eyes lit up, and the effect was dazzling. "The universe is governed by physics. Yet everyone here is obsessed with bending the rules. You adhered to them. You made them work for you. It is the most logical and admirable thing I have seen since I arrived on this ridiculous station." She beamed at him, a smile of such genuine, uncomplicated radiance that it felt completely out of place in the room of calculating politicians. Then she said the three words that vaporized his normal life. "I love you." The universe, which had been humming along with polite chatter and the clinking of glasses, seemed to stop. Evan Price stopped breathing. He heard, from two alcoves over, a Cathari delegate. To Crystalline chime stutter and go flat. Mira was still beaming at him, clearly pleased with her declaration. Evan's mind, usually a calm sea of procedure, was now a hurricane. He could feel the cold thing in his chest stir, not with anger, but with a feeling of profound, cosmic exasperation. "Ma'am," he said, and he was impressed that his voice came out at all, let alone with its customary lack of inflection. That is a culturally significant phrase. Yes, she said, nodding enthusiastically. I know. I studied a profound, deep-seated appreciation for a being, often leading to a desire for permanent association or pair bonding. I downloaded the primary definition from your own cultural index. It seems perfectly applicable. He stared at her. She used the dictionary. He was going to be court-martialed because of a dictionary. Ma'am, he tried again, his voice dangerously quiet. That phrase is not used for catching data slates. It implies a level of personal emotional commitment that is inappropriate for this setting. Inappropriate. Mira's smile finally faltered. She blinked, the new information visibly processing. But it is logical. I appreciate your efficiency, your logic, your restful lack of projection. The data suggests a high probability of compatible coexistence. Therefore, love. That is not how it works, Evan said through gritted teeth. Oh, the confidence was gone, replaced by a dawning horror. She looked around. The Cathari was now staring openly. The gaseous entity had floated closer. And worse, the human ambassador Evan was supposed to be guarding was looking at them, a strained, horrified smile plastered on his face. Across the room, Mira's two handlers were no longer in conversation. They were staring directly at her, their pearlescent faces pale with shock. She had just declared, in a room full of the galaxy's most powerful beings, a profound desire to pair bond with a low-level, non-powered human guard. "Oh," Mira whispered, her face flushing a shade of lavender. "That was a non-standard application, was it not?" "That is one way to put it, ma'am," Evan said. "This is suboptimal," she muttered, shrinking in on herself. Extremely. Before he could say another word, the 2 trillion handlers materialized at her side. They did not appear to move. They were simply not there. And then there. They each took one of her arms. They did not speak to her. They bowed, a single, sharp, fluid motion, toward Evan. It was a gesture of apology so profound, it was almost insulting. Then they and Mira were gone, guided swiftly and silently out of the lounge. Evan Price did not move. He returned his gaze to the middle distance. He continued his scan of the room. On the outside, he was a perfect statue of military professionalism. On the inside, he was screaming. His comms unit, silent for 3 hours, chirped in his ear. "Sergeant Price!" came the ice-cold voice of Captain Thorne, his commanding officer. "Report to Briefing Room 1. Now. And, Sergeant, try not to declare your undying love for any more alien royalty on the way." The walk to the briefing room was the longest of his life. He could feel the stares, the delegates, the guards. Even the service drones seemed to pause to watch him pass. He was no longer Evan Price, the Gray Rock. He was the human soldier the Trillion Princess loved. He wanted to teleport. He wanted to bend light around himself and become invisible. He wanted to do any of the flashy, stupid things the powered recruits did. Instead, he just walked, his boots making a precise, steady click on the obsidian floor. The cold thing in his chest felt heavier, like a block of neutronium. He had spent 20 years hiding it, building a life so boring, so average, that no one would ever look twice at him. He had built his normalcy brick by brick, report by report, regulation by regulation. In 10 seconds, a blue-haired alien girl with a poor grasp of linguistics had taken a plasma torch to the whole structure. Captain Thorne was waiting for him. She was a tall woman, whose uniform seemed to have been starched with raw anger. She did not ask him to sit. "Sergeant," she said, her voice clipping the words. I have just spent the last 20 minutes in a high-priority video conference with the Trillion Ambassador, the Human Consortium Liaison, and 2 admirals from Alliance High Command. Yes, Captain, Evan said. They are displeased. She tapped a console, and a holographic image of Mira appeared. This is Mira of House Kavere. She is not an analyst. That is a courtesy title. She is the Imperial Chancellor's 3rd daughter. She is, for all intents and purposes, a princess. Evan's stomach, which had been in freefall, hit the floor. I was not aware of that, Captain. Obviously, Thorne snapped. If you were, I assume you would have had the good sense to run in the other direction. Instead, you accepted her declaration. I corrected her linguistic misapplication, Captain. The interaction lasted less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes is all it took, Price. Thorne paced the room. The Trillions are a mess. They are a deeply logical, emotionally suppressed society. For one of them, especially one of her rank, to make such a public emotional outburst, it is unprecedented. They do not know what to do. They are half convinced you have compromised her, that you use some kind of hidden human power. A cold spike of fear lanced through Evan, far sharper than the fear of a reprimand. Captain, I have no powers. My file is clear. I know your file. Price. Her eyes narrowed. I know you are the most average man in my command. That is the only reason you are not in a holding cell right now. The Trillions are panicking. They see this as a potential political disaster. An emotional royal is an unpredictable royal. And the ambassador. He believes you. Believes me, Captain. He believes your professionalism, your complete and total lack of reaction. He reviewed the security footage. He said, and I quote, "No being in the galaxy could be that boring unless it was genuine." Congratulations, Sergeant. Your personality is officially our best diplomatic defense. Evan was not sure if he should be relieved or insulted. He settled for, "Thank you, Captain." "Do not thank me," she said. "This is not over. The summit is in recess. The Trillions have recalled their delegation for consultation. And you are a problem. You are the focal point of an intergalactic incident." "What are my orders, Captain?" Thorne looked at him, a long, weary expression on her face. "You are to return to your quarters. You are confined to base until further notice. You will speak to no one about this. You will not access the public nets. You will sit in your room, Sergeant, and you will continue to be as aggressively boring as you possibly can be." "Am I understood?" "Yes, Captain." He saluted. She returned it. He turned and walked out of the briefing room, his steps just as measured as before. He made it to his small, gray habitation unit without incident. The door slid shut behind him, sealing him off from the chaos. The room was sparse, a standard military cot, a small sanitation unit, a footlocker. Normal. Evan stood in the center of the room for a long time. He closed his eyes. He could feel it. The incident in the lounge had shaken him, and the cold thing was stirring. It was usually a whisper, a hum at the edge of his senses. Now, it felt like a star straining to be born. He had not let it out since he was 10 years old, since the day he had gotten angry at a neighborhood bully and had, for one terrifying second, erased the space the bully was standing on. The boy had reappeared half a second later, unharmed but screaming, 3 feet to the left. No one had seen it, but Evan knew. He had not just moved the boy. He had edited the fabric of reality. Since that day, He had poured all his energy into being small, into being unnoticeable, into being normal. He unclenched his fist. He could feel the power receding, sinking back beneath the layers of control. He was safe. He sat on his cot and picked up a physical book, a relic he had found in a junk shop. He opened it to his bookmark. He would read, he would wait. This would blow over. The Trillians would re-educate their princess on human idioms, and the summit would resume. He would go back to standing still. He repeated that to himself for 6 hours. Then, his door chime rang. A sound it had never made before. It was not a normal chime. It was the high, piercing tone reserved for Priority 1, command-level summons. Evan Price stood up. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this was not about a reprimand. This was not about being confined to quarters. His life as a gray rock was over. The universe, it seemed, had decided to look at him, and it was not blinking. He opened the door. 2 members of the Imperial Guard, the Trillian Imperial Guard, were standing outside. They were not wearing Alliance uniforms. They were clad in stark, silver armor that seemed to drink the light in the hallway. "Sergeant Evan Price," the lead guard said. His voice was a perfectly synthesized baritone. "The Empress requests your presence." Evan looked at the 2 guards. He looked back at his empty, normal room. He thought about the noodle shop. He thought about the dictionary definition of love. "Of course," he said. His voice perfectly, professionally flat. "I would not want to keep her waiting." The walk to the Trillian sector of the Citadel was an exercise in controlled dislocation. The air itself seemed to change. The human section was a cacophony of noise, overlapping advertisements, and the smell of recycled air and synthesized coffee. The moment they passed the shimmering energy field that marked the Trillian diplomatic territory, all of that fell away. There was only silence. It was not a peaceful silence. It was a heavy, pressurized silence, as if the very air was being monitored and found wanting. The light was different, a pure, cold white that emanated from the walls themselves, leaving no shadows. The 2 Imperial Guards moved on either side of Evan, their silver armor making no sound on the pearlescent floor. They did not guide him by touching him. They simply occupied the space where he might have turned, hurting him with their presence. He was a professional. He matched his breathing to the dead silence. He kept his gaze forward. He cataloged the differences. No guards with visible weapons. No visible security scanners. But he had the sudden, chilling certainty that the walls themselves were watching him, and that the 2 silent guards were more dangerous than a full platoon of human Marines. They did not go to a grand audience hall. They entered a room that was simultaneously sterile and chaotic. It was a temporary command center, and the walls were not walls at all, but floor-to-ceiling holographic displays, streaming data so complex it gave Evan a headache just to glance at it. He saw galactic charts, complex equations, and what looked disturbingly like biological schematics, all shifting and reforming in midair. Mira was there. She was standing in the corner, and the defiant boredom he had seen in the lounge was gone. She looked small, her posture rigid, her hands clasped behind her back. She was staring at a fixed point on the floor, the picture of a chastised child. Her gaze flickered to him for a microsecond, a flash of pure, unadulterated panic, before she snapped it back to the floor. In the center of the room, a tall, slender figure stood with her back to them, seemingly absorbed in a swirling projection of a star system. She was taller than the guards, wearing a simple, unadorned robe of a white so pure it seemed to pull the light from the room. The lead guard stopped. "Sergeant Evan Price, as requested." The figure did not turn. Her voice, when it came, seemed to emerge from the air all around them, a perfectly modulated alto that was neither machine nor human, but something terrifyingly in between. "The anomaly." The figure turned, and Evan Price understood why the Trillion Empire, in its first diplomatic summit, was already shifting the balance of galactic power. This was the Empress Theresa. Her face was a masterpiece of pale, symmetrical beauty, but her eyes were the oldest things Evan had ever seen. They were the color of a dying star, a cold, piercing silver. She did not look at him as a person. She looked at him as a problem on a data screen. "You are the human," she stated. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty," Evan said. His voice, to his own relief, was steady. "My daughter," the Empress said, gesturing one long, elegant hand toward the corner, "has a flaw. She is an analyst. She seeks patterns. She has an unfortunate, primitive tendency to romanticize them. She has done so with you." Evan felt his professional mask crack. "Your Majesty, I assure you, nothing happened. She misinterpreted a common courtesy." "You retrieved a data slate," the Empress said, her silver eyes unblinking. "And in doing so, you displayed a lack of overt power, which she interpreted as a higher form of control. Her logic was creative." In the corner, Mira flinched, as if the word creative were a physical blow. "The result," the Empress continued, "is a political contamination. Our first summit, and a daughter of the Imperial House, declares a profound emotional commitment to a foreign foot soldier. The Cathari are amused. The Vreen are calculating the potential shift in alliances. Your own, superpowered. Human delegation is terrified. This is inefficiency. It must be purged." Evan stood still. There was nothing to say. He was a piece of contaminated data. "The incident cannot be erased," the Empress declared. "A public retraction would imply a flaw in Imperial judgment. That is unacceptable. Therefore, the incident must be concluded. Mira will be returned to the homeworld. Trial immediately. She will undergo recalibration and be reassigned." Evan felt a small, inappropriate spark of relief. She was leaving. This would be over. "And you," the Empress said, "will escort her." The relief vanished, replaced by a cold dread that was far worse than before. "Your Majesty," Evan said, forcing his voice to remain level, "I am a sergeant in the Alliance Guard. I have a chain of command. I cannot accept orders from a foreign power. Your chain of command has been persuaded." A faint, cold smile touched her lips. "Your superiors are, it appears, desperate to show their goodwill. They see you not as a soldier, but as a diplomatic offering, a token of apology for your species being so emotionally confusing. You have been placed on detached, indefinite assignment, effective immediately. Your new commanding officer is me." The betrayal was so sharp, so total, that Evan had to lock his knees to keep from swaying. Thorn, the admirals. They had thrown him to the wolves to make their own lives easier. He was no longer a soldier. He was a sacrifice. "This is not a debate, Sergeant Price," the Empress said. "It is a statement of fact. You are the origin of the anomaly. Your presence is required to contain it. You are the control variable. You will ensure Mira arrives on Trill without further emotional deviation. You will deliver her to my analysts. Then, perhaps, you will be returned to your Normal. Life. She looked at him, and for a second, he felt the full, crushing weight of her intellect. She knew he craved normalcy, and she was showing him, in no uncertain terms, that she was the one who could grant it, or withhold it, forever. "I understand, Your Majesty," he said. The words tasted like ash. "Good. Logic prevails." She turned her attention to her daughter. "Mira." "Yes, Empress," Mira whispered, her voice trembling. "You have disgraced your house. You allowed flawed, sentimental data to override your core programming. You will be silent. You will be obedient. You will learn from the human's professionalism. You will observe his containment. You will not speak unless he addresses you. You will not feel. Do you comprehend, Ah?" "I comprehend, Empress," Mira said. She finally looked up, her violet eyes swimming with a misery so profound it was almost as alien as her mother's logic. "The courier in violet is prepared," the Empress said, turning back to the star chart. "You leave in 1 hour. Do not fail me, Sergeant. My patience for anomalous data is limited." Evan was dismissed. The silent guards escorted him, not back to his own quarters, but to a sterile, silver airlock. A small, sleek ship, shaped like a blade, was docked on the other side. This was the Inviolate. Captain Thorne was waiting for him, just inside the airlock. She was holding his duty bag. She would not meet his eyes. "Price," she said, her voice rough. "Captain," he replied. His voice was dead. "This is above my pay grade. Sergeant, it is above everyone's, the Empress." She did not ask. She informed. The admirals agreed. "It is a temporary assignment. To foster interspecies goodwill." "You mean I am the apology," Evan said. Thorne winced. "You are the best man for the job. Evan, you are controlled. You are professional. You will not make this worse. Just get her home. Get her home. And this all goes away." She thrust his bag at him. "Your sidearm is inside. Standard issue. The Trillions insisted. A guard must be armed. It seems you are, officially, her bodyguard." He took the bag. "And what if I refused?" Thorne finally looked at him, and her eyes were full of a grim pity. "Then, you would have been charged with insubordination, dereliction of duty, and actively sabotaging an alliance treaty. They would have given you to the Empress anyway, just in chains, this way." "You are still a sergeant." He nodded. She was right. He was trapped. "Yes, Captain. Good luck, Price." She turned and walked away, and Evan felt the final lock click into place. He stepped onto the Inviolate. The ship was as silent and sterile as the diplomatic wing. The walls were the same pale, light-emitting material. There was no crew visible. He assumed it was automated, or piloted by Trillions who did not feel the need to greet their passenger. He found the main cabin. Mira was already there, strapped into a passenger containment harness that looked more like a pilot's acceleration couch. She was staring straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap. Evan took the harness opposite hers. The silence stretched. The ship gave a faint, almost imperceptible hum, and he felt the artificial gravity shift slightly as they detached from the Citadel. He was now, officially, in hostile territory. He was a guard. He had a duty. He would perform it. "Analyst Mira," he said, his voice loud in the small cabin. She jumped, her eyes snapping to his. "Yes, Sergeant." Her voice was a tiny, programmed whisper. "I am Sergeant Price. I am your assigned protection detail for the duration of this journey." "I comprehend," she whispered. We need to establish parameters, Evan said. His voice, all business. 1. You will remain in your designated quarters unless I authorize your movement. 2. You will not interact with the ship's navigation or communication systems. 3. You will not exit the vessel without my direct escort. 4. You will not engage in non-standard linguistic declarations with anyone. He expected an argument. He expected her to quote some obscure logical premise. Instead, she just nodded, her cobalt hair falling over her face. I comprehend, Sergeant. I am data corrupt. The ship hummed again, a signal of jump drive engagement and a wave of nausea, both physical and existential, washed over Evan. He was trapped on a ship 1,000,000 miles from home, with a girl who had ruined his life, a new boss who could erase him from existence, and a set of orders that had turned him from a soldier into a babysitter. The next few days were a special kind of hell. Evan's normal life had been built on rigid schedules and predictable outcomes. Life on the Inviolate was anything but. The ship's internal chronometer was set to trillion standard, a cycle of 38 hours. The food was trillion, delivered from a slot in the wall. It was a perfectly balanced, utterly tasteless, pale green paste. His job, as far as he could tell, was to sit in a room and watch Mira be miserable. She followed his orders to the letter. She stayed in her cabin. She was silent. She ate her green paste. She was a perfect, obedient prisoner. It was driving him insane. He was a man of action, trained to counter threats. The threat here was silence. The threat was a pair of violet eyes, glimpsed when she thought he was not looking, that were utterly, hopelessly lost. On the third cycle, he could not take it anymore. He was pacing the small common area, the cold thing in his chest coiling tight with pure, unadulterated boredom and anxiety. He went to her cabin. The door slid open at his approach. She was sitting on the floor, not on the cot. She was trying to meditate, her eyes closed, but her whole body was trembling with tension. "Analyst," he said. She sprang to her feet. "Yes, Sergeant. This silence, it is inefficient." He did not know what he was saying. He was just breaking the routine. "Report. What is your function? Your true function, not the analyst title." She looked confused. "My function is analysis. I observe, I find patterns. I report." "And what pattern did you find in me?" he asked. The question was out before he could stop it. It was unprofessional. It was a mistake. Her eyes widened. You were the only one not projecting. Everyone in that room was broadcasting two signals. The signal they spoke, and the signal they felt. Your ambassador projected friendship, but his data stream felt like fear. The Cathari projected harmony, but their data stream felt like opportunism. It was loud. It hurt. But you were just quiet. You were a single, clean signal. "I am here. I am doing my job." It was orderly. "I told you." It was beautiful. She paused, then looked horrified. "I have spoken of emotion. I have violated the Empress's directive. I require recalibration." "Stop," Evan said, holding up a hand. "Just stop. You are not a machine. Mira." "I am," she insisted, her voice cracking. "I am Trillion." "We are logic. We are order. I am broken." "You are not broken," Evan sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "You are just, bad at human metaphors." "A metaphor." "Yes. I love you is not a logical assessment. It is A malfunction. It is a biological spike. It is a temporary insanity. It is not supposed to be used for catching data slates. A flicker of her old self returned. That is a very inefficient design for a species. How do you propagate if your primary bonding call is a malfunction? We manage, Evan said grimly. A small beep came from the wall. The nutrient paste slot opened. Evan looked at the identical tube of green goo, and something in him snapped. No, he said. Sergeant. No, I am not eating that. I am a human. I require flavor, data corruption, something. He stalked over to the nutrient synthesizer. A small, recessed panel he had been ignoring. He had seen them on Alliance ships. He punched the console. Manual synthesis, override. Codec price, E, 73499. The console lit up. A list of available base elements appeared. Carbon, protein, lipids, sodium. Right, Evan said. Let's see. We are going to make a grilled cheese sandwich. A grilled cheese. Mira crept up behind him, her curiosity overriding her programmed misery. What is its function? Its function, Evan said, tapping in commands, is to not be green paste. We need bread, so processed carbohydrate. Here. And we need cheese, processed lipids and protein. Here. He worked the panel. After a few minutes, a slot opened, and a square, warm, yellow and white object dropped out. It smelled wonderful. He took it. See grilled cheese. She peered at it. The lipids are saturated. The sodium content is 200% above recommended daily intake. The carbohydrate is bleached. Sergeant, this is poison. It is heaven, Evan said, and he took a bite. The taste of melted, salty fat and toasted bread hit his tongue, and he almost groaned. It was the first real thing he had tasted in days. He looked at Mira. She was staring at the sandwich with a mixture of horror and fascination. Go on, he said, gesturing to the synthesizer. Your turn. Make something. I cannot. It is not optimized. Optimize this, Evan said, pointing to his own face. I am your mission. Your mission is bored. It is miserable. If I am miserable, I am a bad guard. It is your logical duty to improve my morale. Her eyes lit up. A logical duty? Yes, a logical duty to poison me. She turned to the panel. Her hands flew across the console, far faster than his had. She was not looking for a grilled cheese. She was cross-referencing, analyzing, synthesizing. You said you required flavor, she murmured. An archaic term for chemoreceptor stimulation. Your species finds pleasure in mild cellular damage, capsaicin, ethanol, menthol. Fascinating. Inefficient, but fascinating. After a moment, the synthesizer beeped again. A small, dark blue cup appeared. It was steaming. What is it? Evan asked. Suspicious. It is a human beverage from your own archives. Category comfort. She pushed it toward him. It is called hot chocolate. I have analyzed the components. It is mostly sugar, lipids, and a mild stimulant. It should not be fatal. He took the cup. He sniffed it. It smelled like home, like the base cafeteria on a cold day. He took a sip. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. He looked at her. She was watching him, her head tilted, analyzing his reaction. Is the data stream acceptable? She asked. It is acceptable, Evan said, his voice thick. Good, she nodded, satisfied. My analysis of comfort was correct. They stood in silence for a moment. Evan drinking his chocolate. Mira watching him. The silence was different now. It was not empty. It was shared. Then Mira, being Mira, had to ruin it. "Sergeant," she said, her tone serious. "Yes. I have been analyzing your Alliance Guard uniform." "What about it?" he asked, instantly on guard. "It is functionally adequate, but aesthetically drab. The gray color has a negative psychological impact. And I do not understand its form. It has no reconfigurability. It is a uniform. Mira, it is not supposed to be reconfigurable." "But mine is," she said. She touched a small, silver clasp at her collar. "It is standard trillion diplomatic wear. It is woven from smart fabric. It can adapt to any environment." "That is nice," Evan said, turning back to his hot chocolate. "To demonstrate," she said. "I have been attempting to access your uniform specifications. I believe I can create a more compatible version to improve interspecies relations." "Mira." "No," Evan said, turning around. "That is not necessary. Do not reconfigure." He was too late. She had already touched the clasp. Her severe silver and black uniform dissolved into a cascade of white light. Evan yelped and shielded his eyes. When the light faded, she was, well, she was dressed as a bird. A massive, neon purple bird. The uniform had malfunctioned. Horribly. It had interpreted compatible and alliance, and had clearly accessed some corrupted file on galactic wildlife. There were feathers. A lot of feathers. They sprouted from her shoulders and her head. "This," she announced, her voice slightly muffled by a small, accidental purple beak that had formed over her mouth, "is suboptimal." Evan Price stared. He was on a classified mission, betrayed by his government, escorting an alien princess who had just turned herself into a giant, tropical-colored chicken. The cold thing in his chest, the thing he had suppressed for 20 years. The singularity of pure, terrifying power. It rumbled. And for the first time in his entire adult life. Evan Price laughed. It was not a chuckle. It was a bark. A short, sharp, explosive sound of pure, unadulterated absurdity. Mira tilted her feathered head. "Sergeant, are you malfunctioning?" Evan could not speak. He was leaning against the wall, clutching his hot chocolate, his shoulders shaking. "Your face is mobile," Mira said, a note of panic in her voice. "This is not standard. This is not in the file." "It is okay," Evan choked out, wiping a tear from his eye. "It is. A positive data stream." He looked at her, at the ridiculous, feathered, beaked, earnest, and utterly broken girl in front of him. Just fix it. "Mira," he said, catching his breath. "Fix the feathers." "Yes, Sergeant," she fumbled with the clasp. The feathers vanished. The beak dissolved. The severe silver uniform reappeared. She looked flustered. Her face flushed lavender. "We will not speak of this," Evan said, his voice returning to its professional monotone. "Agreed. Sergeant, the data is corrupt. It will be purged." He finished his hot chocolate. He was still a prisoner. He was still on a mission he did not want. But as he looked at Mira, who was now primly straightening her uniform as if nothing had happened, he realized something. He was not alone in the room anymore. There was another piece of anomalous data with him. "All right, analyst," he said, setting the cup down. Let's see if we can synthesize a pizza. My morale still requires Optimization. The pizza had been a disaster. Mira, in her quest for optimized flavor delivery, had cross-referenced human festive food with Gorgonian salt crust preservation techniques. The result was a disk of hardened carbohydrate covered in bubbling hot lipids, sodium chloride, and something that looked suspiciously like pineapple. Evan had eaten one slice out of sheer, stubborn defiance. It had tasted, he decided, like a chemical fire. But it was a start. The journey on the Inviolate had settled into a new, strange rhythm. The Empress's directive for silence was still in effect, but Evan had, with the grim determination of a man on a terrible assignment, found a loophole. "Analyst," he said, 2 days after the pizza incident. They were in the small common area, the void of jump space and oily, non-moving smear outside the main viewport. "Yes, Sergeant," she replied, looking up from the data slate she was studying. She had, he learned, a near photographic memory and an appetite for information that bordered on terrifying. She was currently reading a 3,000-page treatise on pre-contact human agronomy. "Your mother, the Empress, ordered you to learn from my professionalism and containment." "That is correct," Mira said, her posture stiffening. "And I," Evan continued, "have determined that your current state of repressed data is not an accurate reflection of my professional state. My professional state requires conversation." She tilted her head. "You require noise. I require information. You are an alien. I am your guard. I cannot guard you effectively if I do not understand the threat. And you are a threat to my sanity. Analyst. So you are going to talk to me, as part of my containment." It was a logical pretzel, and he knew it. But he was desperate. Mira's violet eyes lit up. He had given her a logical parameter. "I comprehend, Sergeant. A fascinating loophole. You are repurposing the primary directive to serve a secondary, unstated goal, the alleviation of your own boredom. Very human. Very inefficient. I approve." And so, she began to talk. She told him about Trill. It was not a world in the human sense. It was a planet-wide, fully integrated intelligence, a world of logic, order, and absolute crystalline perfection. There were no cities. There was just the system. "We do not have childhoods. Like you," she explained, her hands moving as she tried to translate concepts that had no human words. "We are born. We are assessed. We are assigned a function. I was assessed as a high-level analyst. My function is to observe, process, and integrate. My sisters, they are administrators, strategists, bioengineers. My mother is the primary node." "Your mother is a computer?" Evan asked. "No," Mira said, looking offended. "She is the ultimate expression of logical integration. She is the Empress. She holds the pattern for all of Trill. It is a great burden." "And your feelings?" Evan asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Are they part of the pattern?" She looked down. "No, they are noise on Trill. Noise is purged. When I felt the noise in the summit hall, the fear, the lies, it was painful. You were quiet. You were the only one. I did not intend to declare love. I intended to declare appreciation for your signal-to-noise ratio. It seems my translation module cross-referenced the two." "A common mistake," Evan muttered. "But then," she said, looking at him, her gaze suddenly sharp. "I began to analyze the declaration after I made it. And I have been analyzing you. The way you synthesize poison foods. The way you walk. The way your eyes move when you think I am not observing." Evan felt a prickle of alarm. "That is my job, analyst. Scanning?" "No," she said. "Your job is to scan the room. You. You scan the exit. You are always looking for a way out, even when there is no door. You are hiding. Sergeant, you are projecting normalcy so loudly. It has become its own. Noise. Why?" He stood up. The cold thing in his chest was stirring. A sleeping dragon that had heard its name. "That is not your concern, analyst. The conversation is over." "See," she said, but she said it softly. "You are running, even in a sealed room. It is the most illogical, fascinating thing about you." He left the room, his heart hammering a non-standard, inefficient rhythm against his ribs. On the 10th cycle, the Inviolate dropped out of jump space. The transition was jarring. A high, keening alarm, the first non-vocal sound Evan had heard on the ship, echoed through the cabin. He was at Mira's side in an instant, his sidearm drawn, pulling her from her harness. "What is that?" "We have arrived," Mira said, her voice tight with an emotion he could not place. "This is the rendezvous. This is not Trill." The viewport, which had shown only the oily black, was now filled with something immense. It was a ship, but that word was insufficient. It was a floating mountain of silver and black, shaped like an arrowhead, bristling with weapon systems that Evan did not recognize and could not comprehend. It was at least 10 times the size of an Alliance dreadnought. "That," Mira whispered, "is the Logic's Blade, my father's flagship." "Your father, Commander Victor Trevan," she said, "the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet." A new, very cold dread settled in Evan's stomach. The Empress was the intelligence. But this was the fist. A metallic, synthesized voice filled the cabin. "Courier Inviolate. You are cleared for docking. Bay 4. Prepare for biological scan. Stand by." "We are no longer on a diplomatic mission, are we?" Evan said, holstering his weapon. "No, Sergeant," Mira said, her face pale. "We are this. This is how the Trillian Empire treats its diplomats. Welcome to the fleet. Docking was a violation." The Inviolate was drawn into the massive ship by a tractor beam, and the moment the airlocks hissed shut, the ship was flooded with a pale blue gas. "It is a decontamination scan," Mira said, her voice muffled as she held her sleeve to her face. "Do not be alarmed. It is only mildly toxic to your physiology." "Mildly toxic," Evan choked, his eyes watering. "It will pass. It is efficient." The gas receded. The inner door opened. Standing in the airlock were 2 Trillians. They were not the silent, silver-clad guards from the Citadel. These were soldiers. They wore black, segmented armor that looked organic, like the carapace of an insect. They carried long-barreled plasma rifles. And between them stood the commander. Victor Trevan was the opposite of his wife. Where the Empress was tall, pale, and ethereal, he was compact, solid, and dark. His pearlescent skin was a shade of graphite, and his eyes were not the silver of a dying star, but the pure, dead black of a void. He looked at Evan, and Evan felt, for the first time, like he was being truly, thoroughly analyzed. Not by a curious girl, but by a butcher assessing a piece of meat. "The anomaly," Victor said. His voice was a low growl. "And the human." "Father," Mira said, stepping forward, her hands clasped. He ignored her. His black eyes were fixed on Evan. Sergeant Price, I have reviewed your file. It is blank. You have no citations, no demerits, no achievements. You are a perfect average human. A statistical impossibility. I do my job, Commander, Evans said. So I am told, Victor said. He walked a slow circle around Evan. Evan stood perfectly still. He was a rock. He had to be a rock. The Empress, Victor said, believes in logic. She believes in systems. She believes this emotional contamination can be recalibrated. I am a simpler being. I believe in excision. He stopped in front of Evan. You have infected my daughter with your human chaos. You are a virus. But Father, no, Mira cried. It was my error. My translational error. He did nothing. Silence, Victor snapped, and the command had a physical force that made Mira stumble back. You will not speak. Anomaly. You are compromised. He turned back to Evan. You have your orders. Escort her. But understand mine. You are on my ship, in my fleet, in my territory. If you deviate, if you look at her in a non-standard way, if you contaminate her further, I will excise you. I will space you. Sergeant. And your average, blank file, will be closed for good. He looked at Mira. The girl will be confined to quarters. You, guard, will be quartered opposite hers. You will not leave. You will not interact with my crew. You will wait until we reach Trill. My men will escort you. He turned and strode away, his black armored guards falling in behind him. The journey on the Logic's blade was not like the Inviolate. The Inviolate had been a sterile, silent box. The Logic's blade was a living, breathing weapon. The halls hummed with a low-level power that made Evan's teeth ache. The air was cold and smelled of ozone and metal. And there were soldiers everywhere, all in the same black carapace, all with the same cold, black eyes as their commander. Evan's quarters were a metal cell. Mira's, across the hall, was identical. 2 soldiers were posted at the end of the corridor, their plasma rifles at the ready. He was a prisoner. She was a prisoner. He stood at his door. He could see her, a sliver of her, through the open hatch of her cell. She was sitting on her cot, as still as she had been when he first found her on the Inviolate. Sergeant, she whispered across the hall. Here, analyst, he said, his voice low. He does not like me. He is your father. Mira, it is complicated. No, he does not like noise. And I am the loudest noise in the Empire. She looked at him, her violet eyes stark in the gloom. He is afraid. Afraid. Evan scoffed. That man is not afraid of anything. Yes, he is, she said, her voice gaining a sliver of its old analytical strength. He is afraid of you. Me, I am an average human, a statistical impossibility. You are a variable he cannot control. The Empress, she can be reasoned with. She is a system. My father. He only understands force. And you have no force. You are quiet. It terrifies him. He does not know what you want. Evan said nothing, because he did not know what he wanted either. He wanted his normal life back. But he was looking at the girl across the hall, the girl who had turned herself into a purple bird, the girl who was being called an anomaly and a virus by her own family. And he felt a new, unfamiliar, and highly inefficient emotion. Anger. The voyage was long. Victor Trevon was true to his word. They were routed through the most dangerous, uncharted territories in the sector. It was not a diplomatic courier mission. It was a military patrol. "He is testing us," Mira said. They were 5 days into the patrol, eating their nutrient paste. Evan had not even tried to synthesize a grilled cheese. The ship's systems would have no doubt reported him for culinary deviancy. "He is testing me," Evan corrected. "He is trying to make me break." "The Calax Nebula," Mira said, pointing to the small star chart in her cell. "We are passing through it. It is unstable." "Unstable how?" "It is a stellar nursery, full of rogue planetoids, gravitic distortions, and creatures. Creatures. The void grazers, massive silicon-based life forms. They feed on gravitic energy. They are curious, and they like to graze on ships that pass through. They are dangerous." As if on cue, the ship's alarm, a deep, guttural thrum, vibrated through the hull. The ship lurched violently, throwing Evan against the wall. Across the hall, Mira's head struck the bulkhead. She cried out, a sharp sound of pain. The 2 guards at the end of the hall did not move. "Mira!" Evan yelled. "Are you all right?" Yes, she gasped. "The shields are fluctuating. A grazer. It is grazing." The ship shook again, a deep, scraping, metallic scream. The lights flickered and died, replaced by a dim, red emergency light. "They are firing," Mira whispered, her voice trembling. They are angering it." Evan could hear the heavy thumps of the plasma cannons, followed by a roar that was not mechanical. It was a roar of pain, and it was outside the ship. Then came a new sound, a high-pitched tearing. "Sergeant!" Mira screamed. "The hull sector 4, this corridor." He saw it. At the end of the hall, where the 2 guards stood, a fissure of pure, white energy was tearing through the metal. A gravitic distortion. The void grazer was not just pushing Robo. It was pulling. The 2 guards, trapped in their black armor, were sliding. Their boots screeched on the metal floor as they were drawn, inexorably, toward the hull breach. "They are sealed!" Mira yelled. "Their armor. It is too heavy. They cannot break the magnetic lock on their boots. They were just standing there, sliding to their deaths. Evan, do something!" Evan looked at the guards. He looked at Mira. He looked at the screaming vortex of energy at the end of the hall. He could feel the cold thing in his chest. It was not stirring. It was awake. It was begging to be released. He could fix this. He could do it. He could erase the breach. He could move the guards. He could edit the fabric of reality. All he had to do was reveal himself to Mira, to Victor, to the entire Trillion Empire. He would stop being average Evan. He would become a weapon, a god, a monster. The cold thing surged. "Let me out!" He saw Mira's face, pale with terror, not for herself, but for him. She was watching him. She knew. "No," Evan whispered. He would not do it. He would not be that. He looked at the 2 guards, now just yards from the breach. He looked at the bulkhead. "Mira," he yelled. "The fire suppression system, the panel by your door, can you reconfigure it?" "What?" she cried. "Can you do it? Override the system? I need foam. All of it. Now." She did not question him. Her hand darted out of her cell, slamming into the wall panel. She was not just pushing buttons. He saw her fingers fly. Her fingers, not his. Rewriting code on the fly. She was an analyst. She found patterns. She made patterns. "Now, Evan," she shrieked. A second later, the entire corridor, including the breach, was filled with a high pressure, instantly hardening, white containment foam. It blasted from nozzles in the ceiling. A roaring, blinding blizzard. The screaming vortex was silenced, choked by the sheer volume of the foam. The two guards were frozen in place, encased in the hardened white material, immobile, but safe. The ship stopped shaking. The red lights were replaced by normal, cold, white light, silence. Evan was covered in foam. Mira was covered in foam. The corridor was a solid white tube. He heard the sound of heavy boots. Commander Victor Trevan appeared at the far end of the corridor, where the breach had been. He was flanked by a new set of guards. He looked at the two soldiers encased in foam. He looked at the sealed hull. He looked down the white tunnel at Evan and Mira. His face was unreadable. He walked down the hall, his boots punching through the hardened foam. He stopped in front of Evan's cell. "You," Victor said, "did this." "The analyst and I," Evan said, his voice level, "contained the situation. Your men were inefficient." Victor's black eyes drilled into him. He was looking for a sign, a flicker of power, a hint of the impossible. He found nothing. Just a human sergeant covered in foam, breathing hard. "You used," Victor said, "a fire extinguisher. The most logical, efficient tool for the job, Commander," Evan said, his voice flat. Victor stared at him for a full 10 seconds. Then he looked at Mira. Her face was triumphant. "You, analyst," Victor said to his daughter, "you overrode my ship's systems. I reconfigured the anomalous data." "Father," she said, her voice shaking, but proud. Victor Trevan looked at his daughter, the anomaly. He looked at the human, the virus. He looked at the two guards who were alive, but would need to be chiseled out of the wall. He did not speak. He just turned, and with a crunch of foam, he stalked away. Evan and Mira were left alone in the silent, white corridor. Evan sagged against the wall, the adrenaline leaving him. He had not used it. He had faced the ultimate test, and he had not used it. He had held the line. He looked across at Mira. She was watching him, but her expression was not triumphant. It was sad. "Sergeant," she said, her voice small. "Yes, analyst, you are a terrible liar." "I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do," she said. "When you looked at that breach, you saw a different solution. I saw it on your face. You had another option. You could have fixed it. Really fixed it." The cold thing in his chest went utterly still. "You did not use it," she whispered. "You chose foam. You chose the inefficient human solution. You let them think you were average. You had all that power, and you chose not to use it." She looked at him, and her violet eyes were not full of love, or logic, or admiration. They were full of a deep, profound, and terrifying understanding. "I was wrong, Evan," she said, her voice breaking. "It is not your quiet that is beautiful. It is your control. I have never seen anything like it. And I love you." This time, she did not say it like a curious analyst. She did not say it like she had found it in a dictionary. She said it like she meant it. Evan Price, the man who craved normalcy, the man who was a statistical impossibility, closed his eyes. He was on a ship full of enemies, escorting a girl who saw right through him, and she had just, for the second time, completely and utterly ruined his life. "This," he said, to himself and to the universe, "is suboptimal." The journey from the Calax Nebula was defined by a new, excruciating silence. Mira's second declaration had not been a mistake. It had not been a translational error. It had been a quiet, devastating statement of fact, spoken by a woman who had seen the monster in his closet and called it beautiful. And Evan, for his part, had no protocol for this. He had protocol for hull breaches, for assassins, for diplomatic incidents. He had no protocol for a woman who saw his deepest, most terrifying secret and was not afraid. He had no protocol for a woman he was, against all logic, beginning to care for. He fell back on his training. He became, once again, Sergeant Price. He was polite. He was professional. He was distant. He ran diagnostics on the ship's internal systems. He cataloged the nutrient paste inventory. He did not look at her. And Mira, in a display of tactical genius that her father would have admired, let him. She did not push. She did not analyze. She simply watched. She watched him run, even in their sealed metal world. The Logic's blade was a behemoth, and it moved with the arrogance of a predator. They had rejoined the main fleet, a swarm of smaller, blade-like destroyers surrounding the flagship. They were, Mira informed him, less than 1 day from Trill. The journey was almost over. Evan stood at the viewport in his small cell, watching the stars resolve from the smear of jump space to sharp, cold pinpricks. This was it. 1 more day. He would deliver her. The Empress would recalibrate her. Victor would probably try to have him killed, but that was a future problem. He would be returned to the Alliance, and he would request a transfer to the most boring, isolated outpost in the galaxy. He would be normal again. He repeated this to himself until he almost believed it. The alarm was not a sound. It was a violation. It was a psychic scream that bypassed the ship's audio systems and lanced directly into his skull. A sensation reserved for a hull breach on the bridge. The Logic's blade did not just shudder, it flexed, a giant waking in pain. Evan, Mira screamed from across the hall. He was moving before the red emergency lights even flickered on. He was at his door, peering down the corridor. Analyst report. "It is an attack," she yelled, her voice high with shock. "A fleet. They are not Trillion. They are hegemony." The Ethel Guard hegemony. Evan's blood went cold. They were the dark secret of the Alliance. A faction of human supremacists who believed in purity. They saw alien contact not as an opportunity, but as a contamination. And they were, to a man, violently superpowered. The ship lurked again, a deep, resonant boom that shook Evan's teeth. "They are firing kinetic kill vehicles," Mira analyzed, her voice trembling but fast. "They are bypassing the energy shields. It is a primitive, human tactic. And it is working," Evan snapped. He looked down the hall. The 2 guards were gone, summoned by the red alert. It was just him and her. "Stay in your cell, Mira. That is an order." "A suboptimal order," she yelled back. "They are—" "Oh, no. Evan, they are breaching, not the hull. They are inside." He heard it then. Not an explosion. A hiss. A high-energy cutting tool, somewhere close. The bulkhead at the far end of the corridor. The one leading to the main spine of the ship glowed cherry red. Then it slagged, melting into a perfect, gaping circle. 3 figures in stark, bone-white armor stepped through the smoke. They were human, and they carried weapons that were a grotesque hybrid of Alliance tech and something else. "Target identified," the lead figure said. His voice was a flat, synthesized monotone. "The anomaly. Secure her." "Like hell you will," Evan snarled. He drew his sidearm. The simple, standard-issue Alliance pistol. He was a rock. He was a soldier. He was normal. He fired twice. His first shot hit the lead soldier in the chest. The plasma bolt sizzled against a personal energy shield, flaring white and dissipating with a snap hiss. "Primitive," the soldier said. He did not even flinch. He raised his own weapon. Evan was not a superhuman. He was just fast. He dove back into his cell as the air where he had been standing erupted in a spray of molten metal. A plasma cannon. "Mira, bar your door," he yelled. "Trillion doors do not bar, Sergeant. It is an inefficient security concept." The two other soldiers were moving down the hall, weapons raised. Evan leaned out, fired twice more to slow them down, and ducked back. This was not a fight. This was an execution. He had a pistol. They had shields and cannons. "Evan!" Mira shrieked. A different sound. A gasp. He looked across the hall. The back wall of her cell was melting. They were cutting her out from the adjoining corridor. "No!" He burst out of his room, firing as he ran. He was not aiming to kill. He was aiming to distract. "Hey, over here!" The lead soldier turned. "The human escort. The contaminator. We were authorized to purge you as well." He raised his cannon. Evan did not run. He did not dodge, and he was a guard. He stood his ground. He raised his pistol, a pathetic, useless gesture. From behind the lead soldier, a gout of white, hardening foam erupted, covering the soldier's back and weapon. Evan stared. The two other soldiers, halfway down the hall, turned in confusion. "Commander what?" "The fire suppression," Mira yelled. She was standing in the doorway of her cell, her hand on the emergency panel, her face a mask of fierce, terrified concentration. She had done it again. The lead soldier roared. He was encased in foam, his cannon useless. "You, alien, filth." "I am a trillion analyst," Mira said, her voice shaking, "and your tactics are redundant." The two other soldiers raised their weapons. Evan did not wait. He fired, his plasma bolts hitting the first soldier in the unshielded joints of his armor. The man screamed and went down. The second soldier fired. The plasma bolt hit Evan high in the chest. It was not a shot. It was a punch. It was like being hit by a shuttle. The world exploded in the white-hot agony. He was thrown back against the bulkhead, his pistol clattering to the floor. He looked down. His uniform was gone. His armor was gone. There was just a black, smoking, cauterized crater where his left shoulder had been. The pain. It was absolute. It was all. He was. Evan. He heard Mira scream. The soldier who had shot him was advancing on her. The lead soldier was trying to break free of the foam. Evan tried to move. His legs would not obey. He was dying. He was dying, and he had failed. He was a normal man, and he was dying a normal, useless death. He tried to find the cold thing, the power. He had spent his whole life caging it. Now, when he needed it, he could not find the key. The pain was too loud. The soldier reached Mira. He grabbed her by her blue hair, yanking her out of the cell. Patient 0, secured for purgation. "No, let me go." Mira clawed at his armored gauntlet. The soldier looked at Evan, who was slumped against the wall, bleeding out. "Your love is weak, anomaly, as is his entire pathetic race." He began to drag her down the hall. "No," Evan whispered. The word was just a bubble of blood in his throat. "No." The cold thing in his chest did not stir. It did not awaken. It detonated. It was not a decision. It was a reflex. It was the universe snapping back into its correct configuration. The configuration where she was not taken. The pain in his shoulder did not vanish. It was erased. The smoking crater on his chest was gone. The skin was smooth. The uniform was still blasted, but the wound was gone. Evan stood up. The soldier dragging Mira stopped. He felt the change in the air. He turned, his cannon raised. Evan looked at him. He was not Evan Price. Sergeant. He was something else. He felt the vibration of the ship's engines. He felt the hum of the plasma cannon in the soldier's hand. He felt the bioelectric panic in the man's heart. He felt the spin of every atom in the corridor. "This," Evan said, and his voice was not his. It was a chorus. It was the sound of a star being born. "Is not allowed." He held up his right hand. The soldier fired. The plasma bolt left the barrel. It traveled 1 foot, and it stopped. It just hung in the air, a pulsing, incandescent ball of pure energy, frozen in time. The soldier in the white armor stared at it. "What?" Evan closed his fist. The plasma bolt imploded. It vanished. No sound. No explosion. It just ceased to exist. The soldier, to his credit, was fast. He tried to fire again. "Inefficient," Evan said. He looked at the plasma cannon, the metal and wires and power cells. They were a pattern, a complex, ugly pattern. Evan erased the pattern. The cannon in the soldier's hands did not melt. It did not break. It turned into a cloud of fine, gray dust that sifted through his armored fingers. "No," the soldier whispered, backing away, pulling Mira with him. This is sorcery." The lead soldier finally broke free of the foam, his armor smoking. "Kill him, he is an Omega-level variable." He raised his plasma cannon. The second soldier, who was now weaponless, pulled a knife. They advanced on him. Evan sighed. This was also loud. He looked at the lead soldier. He did not want to erase his weapon. He wanted to make a point. He focused. He remembered Mira, her purple feathers, her accidental beak. He tried to erase the soldier's cannon. His aim was rusty. The soldier's helmet vanished. The man stopped, his hand flying to his head. He was a middle-aged, very angry, very bald man. His eyes were wide with pure, undiluted terror. My helmet?" he stammered. Evan blinked. That was not the intended target. He heard a strangled cough from behind the soldier. Mira, despite being held at knife point, was shaking. "It is a start. Sergeant," she choked out. "But the man with the knife." "Right." Evan focused. He looked at the man with the knife, who was holding Mira. "Let her go," Evan said. "I will kill her," the man screamed, his voice cracking. He put the blade to her throat. "No, you will not," Evan said. He held out his hand. The knife was ripped from the soldier's grasp. It flew through the air, vibrating with impossible energy. It stopped 1 inch from Evan's face. The point aimed directly at him. He plucked it from the air. It was just a knife. He dropped it. It clattered to the floor. The 2 soldiers, the one with the knife and the bald one, were frozen. They were looking at a god. The third soldier, the one he had shot, was groaning on the floor. "Well," Evan said, "this is suboptimal." He was still Evan, but he was also more. The power was thrumming in him. A song he had forgotten he knew. It was good. "The human chaos," Evan said to the bald soldier, "sends its regards." He looked at Mira. She was standing there, her hair a mess, a bruise on her cheek, but her eyes were shining. "Surge," Evan, she whispered. We are leaving, he said. They will. They will follow. The bald soldier stammered. You cannot escape the hegemony. Evan looked at the bulkhead they had cut through. He is right. He looked at the two soldiers. You two. Pick him up. He nodded at their wounded companion. What? Pick him up. Terrified, they hauled their wounded comrade to his feet. Now, Evan said. Run. The two soldiers, supporting the third, scrambled back through the molten hole they had created. Mira, Evan said, get in your cell. Evan, what are you doing? A little reconfiguration. She ran into her cell. Evan looked at the hole. He looked at the bulkhead. He held up his hands. The molten edges of the hole flowed. The metal, as plasteel, was not liquid. It was not liquid, but it was moving. It flowed like water, shimmering. As Evan rewrote the physical laws of that single section of wall, the hole sealed. The metal became solid, cold, and smooth, as if it had never been breached. There was a clang from the other side, as the soldiers, no doubt, realized they had been entombed. That, Evan said, his voice a little shaky, should hold them until your father's men find them. He turned to Mira. She was standing in her doorway, her hand over her mouth. You fixed it, she whispered. The breach, the wound. You are... I am a sergeant, Evan said. And the power was finally, receding, sinking back into the cage. The pain in his shoulder, the ghost of it, returned. He was so tired. I am a sergeant and I am... He slumped against the wall, his legs giving out. The power was gone. He was just Evan again, and the adrenaline was fading, and the shock of his regeneration was hitting him. Mira was at his side in an instant. Evan, are you hurt? I am fine, he panted. Just rusty. Rusty, she repeated. She looked at the sealed bulkhead. She looked at the dust that had been a plasma cannon. Yes, I can see that. You're targeting. It is abysmal. He looked at her. And, despite the fact that his life was over, that he had just revealed himself, that a hostile fleet was still outside, he smiled. A real, actual smile. We need to get to the bridge, he said, pushing himself up. Your father. A new voice, cold, sharp, and full of a new, terrifying respect, echoed from a hidden speaker in the hall. That will not be necessary. Sergeant Price. It was Victor Trevon. The hegemony fleet, Victor's voice continued, is, disengaging. It appears their flagship just lost. Its main drive, it ceased to exist, in their commander's words. They are, quite rightly, terrified. Evan and Mira looked at each other. You missed the bulkhead, Mira whispered, her eyes wide with horrified awe. You hit a starship. I told you, Evan gasped, leaning on her for support. I am rusty. The immediate threat is neutralized, Victor's voice said. My guards are en route to your position. Do not move. And Sergeant. There was a long pause. Your analysis of the situation was acceptable. We will discuss your methods when we reach Trill. The comm clicked off. Evan and Mira were alone in the corridor. He was leaning on her. His power was quiet. Her father knew. Her mother would know. The galaxy would know. His life of normalcy was vaporized. Well, Mira said, adjusting her grip to support his weight. That was a suboptimal abduction. Mira, Evan said, his voice tired. Please, shut up. Yes, Sergeant, she said. And for the first time, he heard the logic, the analysis, and the noise in her voice all align into one perfect, terrifying pattern. She was smiling. The new guards, the ones who had liberated them from the foam-filled corridor, were a different breed. They were not the silent, imposing silver guards of the Citadel, nor were they the black carapaced, insect-like soldiers of the fleet. These were Victor Trevin's elite. They wore armor of dull, non-reflective graphite, and their helmets were featureless, glassy ovals. They did not look at Mira at all. They looked only at Evan. They were escorting him, one in front, one behind, but they kept a distance of exactly 10 feet. It was not a respectful distance. It was the blast radius of a small grenade. Evan was still leaning on Mira. He had tried to walk on his own, but the resurgence of his power, followed by its immediate, panicked suppression, had left him feeling like he had run a marathon while simultaneously being struck by lightning. He was, in a word, wobbly. They are terrified, Mira whispered, her voice a small point of heat near his ear as she helped him through the cold, metallic corridors of the Logic's blade. I can analyze their heart rates from here. They are non-standard, elevated by over 40%. They are soldiers, Evan panted, his ghost wound aching. They are disciplined. They are disciplined, she corrected, in the presence of force, plasma, kinetics, radiation. They have no discipline for this. They are standing near a man who erased a starship's engine. You are not a variable to them anymore. Evan, you are a statistical impossibility. You are a god, and they are atheists. The walk to the bridge was the inverse of his first walk on the ship. The soldiers and crew in the corridors did not ignore him. They did not stare at him with cold suspicion. They parted. They flattened themselves against the bulkheads as he and Mira passed, a ripple of pure, animal terror clearing a path before them. He was no longer Evan Price, the gray rock. He was not even the human. He was the anomaly, and he hated it. The doors to the bridge were a 50-foot expanse of polished black metal. They slid open, revealing a chamber that was not a bridge. It was a cathedral. The Logic's blade was not piloted by men at consoles. The entire forward section of the room was a single, floor-to-ceiling viewport, and floating in the center of the vast, dark chamber was a holographic projection so perfect it hurt to look at. It was the planet Trill. It was not a world of continents and oceans. It was a perfect, shimmering globe of interconnected light. A planet-wide city that looked like a single, massive, crystalline circuit. It was beautiful, and it was the coldest thing Evan had ever seen. Standing before the projection, his back to them, was Victor Trevin. The hegemony is in full retreat, Victor said, his voice a low growl that vibrated in the deck plates. He did not turn. Their flagship, the Righteous Purity, has, quote, ceased propulsion. They are broadcasting a fleet-wide panic signal. They are fleeing. You. He turned. His black, void-like eyes were not angry. They were elated. An impressive display. Sergeant Price, Victor said. Your rust is formidable. It was an accident, Evan said. He had let go of Mira's arm and was now standing on his own, his legs locked, his hands clenched at his sides. He had to be a rock, even now. We do not believe in accidents, Victor said, pacing slowly toward him. We believe in patterns. The Empress, my wife. She believed she could integrate the chaos of the galaxy. She believed in alliances. She believed in Diplomacy. She allowed our daughter, our blood, to be contaminated by your human worlds. She saw it as data acquisition. Father, Mira said, stepping forward, you do not understand. I understand perfectly. Anomaly. Victor snapped. I have always understood. Logic is pure. It is absolute. It is a blade. You do not integrate chaos. You excise it. But she would not listen. She was flawed. Her logic was sentimental. He stopped, standing directly in front of Evan. And then, the hegemony attack. It was a gift. It forced the variable to show itself. You are not a human. You are not a guard. You are pure, unadulterated chaos. The antithesis of everything Trill represents. And you are the proof. Proof, Evan said, his blood running cold. Proof that the Empress's logic is broken, Victor roared, his voice suddenly echoing in the vast chamber. She allowed you in. She allowed you to touch our daughter. She allowed your filth, your emotional noise. To contaminate the system, she is the system failure. Evan realized it. A second too late. This was not a debriefing. This was a coup. The hegemony had not been the enemy. They had been the catalyst. You, Evan said. You knew they were coming. I allowed them, Victor corrected. A small price to pay. To force your hand. To confirm what I already knew. That the galaxy is not logical. It is a tide of madness that wishes to drown us. And my wife. She was opening the floodgates. He turned back to the hologram of Trill. She believes she is welcoming her daughter home for recalibration. She is mistaken. She is a failed node. She must be purged. Evan looked at the holographic controls, at the tactical overlays that had now appeared over the glowing planet. The Logic's blade and its entire attendant fleet were not in a holding pattern. They were in a target lock. You are insane, Evan whispered. You are going to fire on your own planet. I am going to save it, Victor said. I am going to excise the failed node. The central integration spire, my wife. I am going to reboot Trill and restore pure, uncorrupted logic. The bridge doors hissed shut behind them. The two graphite-armored guards raised their plasma cannons. And you, Victor said, turning back, a small, dark device in his hand. You will be studied. We will dissect your chaos, particle by particle, and we will learn how to immunize our galaxy against it. The guards fired. The world went silent. Evan did not think. He did not plan. He acted. The power, the cold, vast, starry power, did not surge. It flowed. The two plasma bolts, incandescent spheres of death, left the barrels, and they unraveled. They did not stop. They did not freeze. They simply came apart. They dissolved in midair, turning from lethal energy into a harmless, shimmering aurora of blue-green light that drifted to the ceiling and faded. The two guards lowered their weapons, their featureless helmets hiding what must have been pure terror. See, Victor hissed. Chaos, pure, beautiful, destructive chaos. He raised the device in his hand. It was not a weapon. It was wrong. It was a small black cylinder, and as he aimed it, the very air around it seemed to fold, to curdle. My wife collected data, Victor said. But I collected weapons. This is a gravitic shear, salvaged from the Xylo's extinction. It does not fire plasma. It does not fire anything. It fires a micro-singularity. It fires reality. It erases a target from the pattern. This was it. The advanced tech. This was a weapon that operated on his level. Victor fired. It made no sound. A line of perfect, mathematical nothingness. A hair-thin crack in the world. Shot across the bridge. It was not fast. It was instantaneous. It erased one of the graphite guards. The guard did not explode. He did not scream. He simply was not. One moment, he was a 6-foot armored soldier. The next, he was gone. His companion, standing 3 feet away, was unharmed. Evan felt it. It was not a wound. It was not pain. It was discord. It was a note so flat and wrong that it made his power recoil. He felt the cold thing in his chest flinch. "Evan!" Mira screamed. Victor was aiming the shear at him. "How do you unravel nothing? Chaos bringer." I cannot," Evan whispered to Mira. It is like me. I cannot stop it." "Then do not," Mira yelled. She was not panicking. She was analyzing. She was pointing at Victor. "He is not creating it. Evan. He is aiming it. Look at his hand. The device is... It is seeking." Evan looked. She was right. The weapon was simple. But Victor's glove... It was covered in fiber optic wire, linked to his helmet. He was aiming with his mind. It was a logic-based targeting system. "It needs a target solution," Mira cried. "So confuse it, give it too many." "Too many what?" Evan gasped, as Victor lined up the next shot. "Target's variables. You are chaos, be chaos." Victor prepared to fire. Evan took a breath. He closed his eyes. He did not want to destroy. He wanted to distract. He remembered Mira's uniform malfunction. He remembered the ridiculous, neon purple bird. He opened his eyes, and he pushed. The bridge of the logic's blade was suddenly, inexplicably, filled with 1,000 shimmering, neon purple birds. They were everywhere. They were projections, not of light, but of pure, disorganized reality. They fluttered through the air, their wings making no sound. They perched on consoles. One landed on Victor's head. "What?" The remaining graphite guard fumbled with his rifle. "What? Zah!" "This a farce," Victor roared. He was genuinely enraged. "Stop this insult." He fired the shear. A line of nothingness appeared and erased a purple bird. The bird simply vanished in mid-flutter. Victor fired again. Another bird. And another. "It is working," Mira breathed. "It is hard," Evan grunted. He was sweating, creating coherent, sustained things. It was infinitely harder than just erasing things. He is still aiming at the planet. Mira ran to a secondary console, her fingers flying across the holographic display. He is locked. The fleet is... He is 8 seconds from firing. The birds are not enough. "I cannot. Stop the fleet. And fight him. And maintain the avian distraction," Evan yelled. The birds were starting to flicker. "You do not have to," Mira shrieked, looking up from her console. "You just have to stop him, but Evan..." The sheer... Victor had had enough. The birds vanished as Evan lost focus. The commander raised the weapon, aiming it directly at Evan's chest. End of the variable. The system must be pure. He was going to fire. Evan looked at this shear. He looked at Mira. He looked at the hologram of Trill, a planet he had never seen, where a woman he did not know was about to be excised by her husband. He could not stop the beam. He could not dodge in time. But Mira was right. He did not have to stop the beam. He had to stop the man. It was an exchange. Victor fired, and in the same femtosecond, Evan acted. He did not erase Victor. He did not erase the weapon. He unraveled them. He reached out with his power, a torrent of pure, unmaking force. Victor screamed, not in pain, in shock. The gravitic shear in his hand, the ultimate weapon, it dissolved. It turned into a cloud of inert, gray dust, sifting through his fingers. His black, high-tech glove, it unwove. The wires, the fibers, they just fell apart. His plasma cannon clattered to the floor, now a useless lump of metal. But it was too late. The shear had fired. Evan saw the line of nothing coming for him. He did not block. He did not run. He accepted. He screamed. It was not a sound. It was a psychic, soul-tearing agony. The gravitic beam, the line of anti-reality, struck him square in the chest. It did not create a wound. It did not burn him. It cut his power. He felt the cold, starry, infinite thing in his chest. The singularity he had caged for 20 years. Fracture. He felt a huge, vital piece of it tear loose. He felt it get erased. The connection, the hum of the atoms, the vibration of the ship's engines, the bioelectric fear from the lone, standing guard. It all went silent. The song was over. Evan Price collapsed, falling to his knees. The world, which had been a symphony of infinite data, was suddenly just a room, a metal room. He was just Evan again. He looked up, blood trickling from his nose. He was dizzy. He was nauseous. He was normal, painfully, agonizingly normal. Evan. Mira was at his side, her arms around him, holding him up. Evan, are you... He looked at Victor. The commander was standing there, disarmed, his hands empty, his face a mask of pure, uncomprehending horror. He had lost. He looked at the main console. The tactical overlay was gone. The firing solution had failed. He looked at Mira. He could not feel her heart. He could not analyze her biosignature. He just saw her, her violet eyes, wide with fear and something else. I missed, Evan whispered, and he coughed. It was a normal, human cough. I tried to get the helmet. He had tried to disarm Victor, but he had been too slow. He had taken the hit. He had traded his godhood for a single, tactical victory. He had sacrificed the very thing everyone was afraid of. Suboptimal, he gasped, slumping against her. No, Evan, she whispered, and she was crying, but she was smiling, her tears tracking through the grime on her face. It was efficient. The last graphite guard, seeing his commander disarmed and the anomaly bleeding on the floor, finally made a logical decision. He dropped his rifle and raised his hands. The main doors to the bridge, the ones Victor had sealed, hissed open, standing in the entryway, flanked by her own silver-clad, silent Imperial guards, was the Empress Teresa. She was identical to Mira, but where Mira was a question, the Empress was an answer. She was tall, pale, and her silver eyes held the cold, mathematical beauty of a glacier. She surveyed the scene. She saw the disarmed guards. She saw the dissolved remains of a Xylos weapon. She saw her husband, Victor, standing broken and disarmed. And she saw her daughter, the anomaly, cradling a bleeding, broken, and suddenly very, very human man. The Empress. Theresa did not look surprised. She just analyzed. My recalibration, she said, and her voice was like cold, perfect music. Appears to have been premature. The bridge was no longer a cathedral. It was a sterile, silent processing room. The Empress. Theresa did not move from the entryway. Her silver eyes, the color of a frozen star, catalogued the scene. They swept past her husband, Victor, who stood disarmed and trembling, his face a mask of illogical rage. They passed over the lone, terrified graphite guard, who had his hands raised so high they were shaking. They noted the dissolved dust of the gravitic shear, the unraveled components of her husband's targeting glove, and the inert, harmless lump of metal that had been a plasma cannon. Then, her gaze settled. She looked at Evan, who was on his knees, his entire weight supported by her daughter. He was bleeding from the nose. His uniform was blasted, and he was palpably, painfully, mortal. And she looked at Mira, her daughter, the anomaly, who was cradling this broken human, not with logic, but with a fierce, protective inefficiency that was an open defiance of every trillion principle. The system, the Empress stated, and her voice, like cold music, filled the silence, has been tested. Her silver-clad guards, the silent, imposing ones from the Citadel, moved past her. They did not move with anger. They moved with the precise, passionless efficiency of medical drones. Two of them flanked Victor. Commander Victor Trevon, the Empress said, her voice dropping no fraction of its perfect modulation. Your analysis of the system failure was itself the failure. You have been reclassified. You are redundant. Victor's face, his dark graphite skin, went pale. Theresa. I did this for for logic. The system, you, were contaminated. Logic, the Empress replied, is the pattern. Victor, you only saw the variables. You are a failed experiment. The silver guards took his arms. He did not resist. He had been a failed experiment his entire life, and he had just finally been told so by the one being in the universe he could not excise. He was led away, a broken, disarmed god. Sergeant Price. Evan looked up. The Empress was now looking at him. He tried to stand, to salute, to be a professional something. But his legs would not obey. He was empty. The adrenaline was gone, and the absence of his power, the sudden, deafening silence in his head, was a wound all its own. Your methods, the Empress said, her head tilting in a mirror image of her daughter's old, analytical motion, are chaotic, but effective. She looked at the spot where the gravitic shear had been. You have erased a Xylos-level threat, and you have cost the Empire a gravitic shear. The net loss is acceptable. She was doing accounting. He had just saved her life, her planet, her empire, and she was tallying the cost. He is hurt, Mira cried, her voice a raw, human noise in the sterile room. Mother, he is bleeding. The Empress's silver eyes moved to the small trickle of blood on Evan's face. Yes, the human chaos is fragile. The doctors are on their way. He will be repaired. She looked at her daughter. And you, Mira of House Kavere, you will be interrogated. Your recalibration will be thorough. Evan felt a new, cold dread. He had won, but he had not saved her. No, he whispered, his voice hoarse. She did nothing. The Empress looked at him. She interfaced with you. Sergeant, that is everything. The system must be purged of all variables. Her silver guards advanced on them, not on him. On her, Evan tried to move. He tried to find the song, the power, the anything. There was nothing. Just the ache in his bones, the dizziness in his head, and the smell of metal. He was just Evan Price. A normal, average, bleeding man. He was useless. He did the only thing he could. He put his arm, his one shaking, human arm, in front of Mira. A pathetic, inefficient gesture of protection. The guards stopped. They looked at his arm. They looked at him. They looked at the stain on the floor where a Xylos weapon had been. They looked confused. And the Empress paused. Her head tilted. She was analyzing. The chaos, she whispered, defends the anomaly. The variable protects the noise. This data is new. She looked at Evan, and for the first time, he did not see an Empress. He saw a mother, a cold, terrifying, logical mother who had just been handed a problem she could not solve. The recalibration, the Empress said, will be delayed, pending further analysis. Take him, repair him, and secure them, together. The silver guards relaxed, one of them, his face a mask of pale, pearlescent beauty, offered Evan a hand. Evan took it. He woke up to silence. It was not the sterile, pressurized logic of the inviolate. It was not the heavy silence of the logic's blade. It was just quiet. He was in a room that was white, the walls, the floor, the ceiling. They were all a soft, matte, light-emitting white. It was restful. He was on a cot, a real cot with sheets. They were soft. He sat up. He was wearing pajamas, a simple, white, cotton uniform. He was not bleeding. His head was clear. His shoulder was gone. He looked. His left arm was new. It was not a prosthetic. It was not synthetic. It was Trillian. It was perfect. A pale, pearlescent, logical arm, seamlessly grafted to his human shoulder. He flexed his new fingers. They moved. They felt. He could feel the thread count of the sheets. The doctors, he whispered, are thorough. He stood up. He was stable. He walked to the door, which was just a seam in the white wall. He looked for the song, the power, the hum of the universe. He put his hand on the wall. He felt wall. A smooth, cold wall. He did not feel the atoms. He did not feel the vibration. The song was gone. The gravitic shear had cut it out of him. It had excised the chaos bringer. He was normal. He had spent his entire adult life craving this. This silence. This mundanity. He had never felt so terrified. He was alone. In his own head. For the first time. The door slid open. Mira stood there. She was not Mira. She was not the anomaly in the ill-fitting uniform. She was not the purple bird. She was Trillian. She was wearing a robe. A simple, elegant silver robe that flowed when she moved. Her cobalt blue hair was woven with silver threads. She looked royal. She looked contained. She looked beautiful. And she looked sad. Evan, she said. Her voice was quiet. Mira, he replied. The decor is new, very white. She did not smile. She analyzed him. The graft is holding. The biological interface is stable. Your human physiology is remarkably resilient. I am repaired, he said. He hated how they talked. Stop, she said, and her voice broke. Please, stop talking like them. Just listen to me. I am talking to you. He stopped. Better, she said. She walked into the room. It was not a cell. It was an observation suite. One wall was glass, a one-way mirror. Where are we? He asked. His own voice sounded rough. We are on Trill, she said. The central integration spire. This is my mother's house. You are her guest. Guest, he repeated. Or experiment both, Mira said, with a flash of her old self. With Trillians, it is always both. She sat on the cot, not near him, just on it. My father, she said, is gone. He has been reassigned to the Outer Rim logic mines. He will analyze rock formations for the rest of his life. It is a fitting punishment for an illogical being. And you, he asked, your recalibration. She looked at her hands. My mother interrogated me for 2 days. She analyzed everything. The summit, the inviolate, the pizza, the purple feathers, the hegemony, the sheer you. And she has come to a new conclusion, Mira said. Her system was flawed, not because it let in chaos, but because it tried to purge it. She sees, now. Logic cannot exist without chaos. It needs an antithesis to define itself. It needs you. It needs me. Evan laughed. A dry horse laugh. I am nothing, Mira. I am empty. The song is gone. The power. It is gone. The sheer took it. Mira's face crumpled. I know, she whispered. I felt it. On the bridge. I saw it happen. You traded it. You traded your godhood for us. I did not trade anything, he said, angrily. I lost. I missed. I tried to disarm him. I failed. No, she said, standing up, walking towards him. You did not fail. You chose. You chose foam. You chose me. And on the bridge, you chose again. You chose to be Evan, not a god, not a monster. Just Evan. She stopped in front of him. She looked up at him. And I love Evan. He looked down at her. He wanted to feel her biosignature. He wanted to analyze her heart rate. He could not. He could only see her. The Empress, he said, his voice thick. She knows this. She knows about us. She knows everything, Mira said. She analyzed me. My feelings are not a flaw. They are a new variable. A bridge between logic and chaos. She has given me a new function. A new function. I am no longer Mira the anomaly, she said. She stood taller. I am Mira the ambassador, the imperial liaison for chaotic variables. My job is to interface with the noise, with the alliance, with the hegemony, with you. Evan stared at her. Me, I am going home. I am done. I am normal. No, Mira said, and she smiled. A sad, wise smile. You will never be normal. Evan, you are the man who erased a starship's engine. You are the man who survived a gravitic shear. You are the man who held a god inside him for 20 years and never used it. But why, she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. She wants to know. My mother wants to know. I want to know. Why did you hide? He turned away. He walked to the window, the one-way mirror. He looked at his reflection. A man with 1 human arm and 1 trillion arm. A monster. A hybrid. It was my ancestor, he said, his voice dead. Generations ago. On Earth. Before the stars. He had it too. The song. He was not a sergeant. He was a leader. A prophet. The Messiah. There was a war. He continued. A terrible war. 2 nations. 1 planet. Millions dead. He wanted to stop it. He wanted peace. So he used it. He gathered the leaders, 2 men, in a room, and he reconfigured them. He edited their minds. He erased their hate. He wrote peace into their souls. Mira gasped behind him. It worked, Evan said. The war stopped. Overnight. He was a hero. They built statues to him. The great peacemaker. For 10 years, he turned to face her. And then it broke. The edit failed. The logic he imposed, it shattered. And the men he changed. They woke up. They realized what he had done. That their peace was a lie. The war that came after, he whispered. It was not a war. It was an extermination. They were not fighting over land. They were fighting the lie. The great peacemaker had stolen their choice, their humanity. They burned the planet. He looked at his hands, his new hand and his old hand. My family, we learned. The song is not a tool. It is a sin. It does not make peace. It makes tyranny. Real peace has to be chosen. It has to be inefficient. It has to be messy. It has to be human. So I hid. I became a sergeant. I became normal. I would not be him. I would not be a victor. I would not be a god. I would rather be nothing. He looked at her. And now I am. The shear. It cured me. It made me safe. I am just Evan. The statistical impossibility. The average man. Mira walked to him. She did not hesitate. She put her hand on his chest, right over the place where the song used to be. He could not feel her biosignature. He could only feel her touch. No, she whispered. You are not average. You are not nothing. You are the man who chose. You had all the power in the universe and you chose foam. You chose me. You chose us. A chime sounded. Soft. Logical. My mother, Mira said, taking his hand. His new, trillion hand. She will see us now. Us, he asked. Us, Mira said. The ambassador and her first chaotic variable. She has a proposal for you. The Alliance has disavowed you. The hegemony wants you dead. You are a man without a planet. She is offering you a new one. She led him to the door. She is logical. Evan. But she is learning. She knows you are not a weapon. You are a shield. And her empire needs a shield. A man who knows the price of peace. A man who will not be a tyrant. He stopped at the door. He was Evan Price, sergeant, retired. He was terrified. He looked at her. It is suboptimal. He whispered. It is life, she replied, and she smiled. She led him out of the White Room to meet his future. The White Room dissolved. Mira led him from the observation suite into the spire itself. It was not a building of corridors and rooms. It was a place of light and energy. They walked on pathways of solid, pearlescent material that hung suspended in a vast, open, internal space, above and below. He could see the shimmering, complex, impossibly fast pathways of the city's logic, the planet's mind, flowing like rivers of light. It was the song he used to feel, made manifest, and he was, to his terror, completely deaf to it. They entered a chamber at the very peak of the spire. It was circular, and the walls were not walls, but a 360-degree, perfect, living view of Trill, its fleet in high orbit, and the stars beyond. The Empress. Theresa was waiting. She was not standing before a console. She was the console. She stood in the center of the room, her silver robe seeming to blend with the light, her hands clasped. She was, Evan realized, the only organic component in the room. She was the final human-shaped processor for an entire planet's worth of data. Mira released his human hand, then took his new, trillion one, holding it firmly. She stood beside him, a bridge, just as she had said. Ambassador Mira, the Empress said. Her voice was the same cold, perfect music. You have escorted the variable. This is efficient. Mother, Mira replied, her voice formal but strong. Sergeant Price is awaiting your proposal. The Empress's silver eyes settled on Evan. It was not a look. It was a scan. He felt the same analyzing pressure he had felt on the Logic's blade. But it was different. It was not hostile. It was curious. Sergeant Evan Price, the Empress said, you are no longer a sergeant. Your alliance has disavowed you. Your government has classified you as a non-human entity, a casualty of diplomatic incident. You are stateless. I am aware, Evan said. his own voice sounding rough and illogical in the perfect room. "You are also hunted," the Empress continued. "The hegemony fled in terror. But terror fades. Curiosity replaces it. They will want the man who erased a starship. They will dissect you to find your power." "A power I no longer have," Evan stated. It was the first time he had said it aloud to her. It was a confession. "Yes," the Empress said. The gravitic shear cut the connection. "You are as you appear. A hybrid. A mortal. A man. This is what makes you invaluable." Evan stared. "I do not understand." "My husband, Victor, he saw only force. He was a flaw. I see patterns. You are a new pattern. You are the only being in galactic record to possess Omega-level reality editing potential and choose fire suppression foam. You are the only variable to hold absolute power and willingly sacrifice it to protect a flawed system. A system that includes my daughter." Her silver eyes, for one brief, illogical second, softened as they glanced at Mira. "My empire is logic," the Empress said. "But logic is brittle. Victor proved this. The hegemony proved this. We need a new variable. We need resilience. We need chaos that chooses order. We need a shield that understands the cost of being a sword." She held out one pale, perfect hand. "The Alliance calls you a casualty. I offer you a function. Ambassador Mira is my voice to the galaxy, my bridge to the chaos. You, Sergeant, will be her shield. You will be her first attaché, her senior guardian. You will teach my empire what you taught her. How to be inefficient. How to be stubborn. How to be human. Will you accept this function?" Evan looked at the Empress. He looked at the vast, logical city of stars around them. He looked at Mira. She was watching him, her violet eyes shining. She was not judging. She was waiting. He was Evan Price, Sergeant, retired. He was broken. He was normal. He was terrified. He was also in love. He let go of Mira's hand. He stepped forward, and he shook the Empress's hand. His new, trillion hand grasping hers. "I accept the function," he said. It had been 6 months. Trill was not home. Home was a memory of a noodle shop and starched uniforms. Trill was an education. The Empress had been true to her word. He was given quarters, a strange, hybrid apartment within the spire itself that attempted to mimic human architecture. It had inefficient soft seating and a redundant food synthesizer that could, after much arguing, produce a passable grilled cheese. He was, officially, the senior guardian to the ambassador. In practice, this meant he was the galaxy's most overqualified bodyguard. He followed Mira to endless diplomatic functions, standing at her shoulder, his hybrid nature a living, breathing statement, logic and chaos. Integrated. His new arm was a marvel. It was stronger, faster, and more precise than his old one. It could interface with trillion systems. And more than once, its sheer, quiet perfection had ended an argument before it began. But he was inside, deaf. The song was gone. His power, the cold, starry thing in his chest, had been excised. He was, as he had always wanted, normal. And it was a living hell. He felt weak. He felt exposed. He was a shield, as the Empress had said. But he felt like one made of glass. His relationship with Mira was the one true, illogical variable in his life. She was brilliant. As ambassador, she was a terrifying force, using her pure, analytical mind to deconstruct political arguments, leaving her opponents baffled and disarmed. She was rebuilding, piece by piece, the trust that her father had tried to shatter. But at night, in their apartment, she was just Mira. "You are brooding again," she said one evening. She was not wearing her silver ambassadorial robes. She was wearing a simple human-style shirt. It was, he knew, a concession. Evan was standing on their balcony, looking out over the perfect, crystalline city. There was no night on Trill, only a low-light cycle. The city slept by dimming its lights to a soft, blue glow. "I am observing," he replied, turning to her. She walked over, her bare feet silent on the pearlescent floor. "No, you are listening for something that is not there. You miss it." "The song," he sighed. He could not lie to her. She analyzed lies too quickly. "Yes, I do. I feel unarmed. You are the ambassador. Your mother is the Empress. Your father is in a logic mine. Everyone is a god. I am just the guy with the arm." Mira stopped in front of him. She took his human hand. Then, she took his trillion hand. "You are not the guy with the arm, Evan. You are the man who chose. My mother respects that. My father feared that, and I—" She leaned her head against his chest, right over the spot where the power had lived. "I am grateful for it. I do not need a god. I need you." He put his arms around her, his human arm and his trillion arm. It was, he thought, the first truly normal moment he had had in a year. He was just a man, holding the woman he loved. It was optimal. "Ambassador Mira, Guardian Price." The voice was not the Empress. It was not a guard. It was polite. They broke apart. Standing in the doorway of their apartment, unannounced, was a trillion Evan had never seen. He was tall, like all trillions, but he was softer than the soldiers or the Empress. He wore the gray robes of an administrator, and his smile was perfect. It was a human smile, and it was the falsest thing Evan had ever seen. "Forgive the interruption to your non-functional time," the trillion said, bowing. "I am Administrator Alaric. I manage the archives. Specifically, historical redundancies." "Administrator," Mira said, her voice instantly becoming the ambassador's. It was cold and analytical. "This meeting was not scheduled. The system did not announce you." "Indeed," Alaric said, his smile never wavering. "The system is so busy lately, integrating all your new data, Ambassador. It sometimes overlooks small details, like me." Evan felt a cold prickle on his neck. The old Evan, the sergeant, took over. This man was projecting. He was projecting friendship. He was projecting deference. He was a liar. "We are all so grateful to you, Guardian Price," Alaric said, his pale eyes turning to Evan. "You truly are a miracle. You showed us the flaw in our own system. That one variable can change everything." "I did my job, Administrator," Evan said, his voice flat. "Oh, you did so much more," Alaric murmured. "My department, Analysis of Redundancy, has been studying your history, specifically your ancestor, the Great Peacemaker. A fascinating man." Evan's blood went cold. He stepped in front of Mira. "His methods were crude," Alaric continued, ignoring the protective gesture. "But his goal was pure. Was it not absolute peace? Absolute logic, imposed on chaos." "He failed," Evan said, his voice hard. "He destroyed his world." "He failed because his edit was not permanent," Alaric said, his smile widening just a fraction. "He was only human. We are trillion. Our edits would be perfect and permanent." Evan understood. This was the new threat. Not Victor, who wanted to purge chaos, but Alaric, who wanted to impose absolute, tyrannical logic on it, using his ancestor's nightmare as a blueprint. "The Empress, she wishes to integrate," Alaric said. Politely. A slow process. Messy. Inefficient. Others of us, we believe in a faster solution. A final solution. To end all war, all noise, forever. Thank you for showing us the way. Guardian. The administrator bowed again. I have taken enough of your time. Good evening, Ambassador. Guardian. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the spire. Evan and Mira were left alone on the balcony. The peaceful moment was gone. Shattered. He was normal. He had no power. He was a man with one human arm. But he was the only one who truly understood the threat. Not of war, but of a peace so perfect it was an extermination. He was the shield. He looked down at his new trillion arm. Perfect. Logical. Strong. He clenched his new perfect fist. Suboptimal, he whispered. But this time he was not defeated. He was ready.